Welcome to a special edition of AI Unraveled, where we explore how technology is fundamentally rewriting the human condition. I'm your host, Etienne Newman, senior software engineer and passionate football dad from Calgary, Alberta in Canada. Before we dive into today's medical autopsy, a quick reminder. If you haven't done so yet, make sure to subscribe to AI Unraveled directly on Apple Podcasts, so you can enjoy this special briefing and all our daily episodes completely ads-free. Today's episode is brought to you by Mind. When pharmaceutical trials miss the reality of human side effects and social media becomes the new medical frontier, trusting the data is a matter of life and death. Mind provides the human-verified, technical-grade analysis you need to separate algorithmic hallucinations from actual, actionable healthcare intelligence. Visit jamgamind.com. Today, we are unpacking the algorithm and the Ozempic era. We are looking at a paradigm-shifting study from the University of Pennsylvania, where AI scanned 400,000 Reddit posts to uncover the hidden side effects of GLP-1 weight loss drugs. Let's unravel what happens when artificial intelligence becomes the world's ultimate doctor.
Imagine you're picking up a new prescription. You're at the pharmacy. The pharmacist hands you that little orange bottle, and it comes wrapped in that, seemingly endless folded up pamphlet of microscopic text.
Oh yeah, the one nobody actually reads.
Right.
Yeah.
But when you unfold it, there is this sort of psychological comfort, right? You look at that dense list of potential side effects, and you just assume, okay, this is it. This multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical company has completely mapped out every single biological reaction this chemical is going to trigger in my body.
It is a very reassuring assumption to make. I mean, we want to believe that modern medicine operates as an exact science, like it's a perfectly closed loop of information where there are just zero clinical blind spots.
Yeah. But what happens when you step out of the clinic and, well, into the world of digital health? Because suddenly that comforting little pamphlet looks a lot less like a definitive scientific document and more like a rough first draft. So welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one.
If you are listening to this right now and you've ever, say, typed a random medical symptom into a search bar at 2 in the morning, you are actually a key player in what we're unpacking today. We are analyzing a paradigm-shifting study from the University of Pennsylvania, which was published in Nature Health in April 2026.
It really is a fascinating piece of research.
It sits squarely at the collision point of GLP-1 weight loss drugs, artificial intelligence, and, honestly, your digital privacy.
Yeah.
I have to throw this to you right out of the gate. What does it say about our healthcare system when an AI algorithm scraping Reddit knows significantly more about how a drug affects you than the actual company that manufactured it?
Well, it tells us that our traditional systems are fundamentally missing the daily lived human experience. I mean, what we are witnessing here and what this study so brilliantly captures is the rise of what sociologists are calling the digital confessional.
The digital confessional, I like that term.
Right. If you think about the typical corporate healthcare experience today, it often feels incredibly rushed and, well, transactional. You might get maybe 15 minutes with a hurried physician who dismisses your nuanced concerns or just chalks them up to stress.
Or they blame it on your lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
You feel like a time slot, not a patient.
Exactly. You're just a box to check. So where do people turn when they feel isolated or unheard by the professionals? They turn to the internet, they go to anonymous forums, and they confess their visceral daily medical realities to total strangers.
Which makes sense, human nature and all.
Yeah, but the profound shift we're exploring today is that artificial intelligence is now quietly harvesting those very intimate confessions to build a completely new kind of medical matrix.
Okay, let's unpack this UPenn breakthrough. Because to understand why AI had to step in and basically play doctor, we first have to look at the glaring systemic blind spots of traditional clinical trials. The methodology of this study is just, it's fascinating to me.
It's incredibly clever.
So researchers, Neil Sehgal and Sharath Chandra Guntuku, basically transformed the open internet into a decentralized observation ward. They deployed Python scripts to scrape over 400,000 anonymous posts.
That's a massive data set.
Huge. From roughly 70,000 users on Reddit specifically communities like Wegovy, pulling data from 2019 all the way through 2025?
And, the technical architecture behind that scraping is really where the magic happens here, because they didn't just have a program blindly reading posts for keywords. They were extracting highly qualitative human narratives.
Right.
They used large language models, the same underlying tech as GPT or Gemini, to take these unstructured, messy conversational anecdotes and convert them into structured JSON data files.
Wow.
So the AI is quietly pulling variables like the user's starting weight, their goal weight, and any pre-existing conditions from casual conversation.
But the hardest part, I'd imagine, is translating how people actually talk into something a scientist can use, right? Like if I post my stomach has been completely wrecked since Tuesday, the AI has to know how to categorize that.
Precisely. They tasked the AI to map colloquial complaints and internet slang directly into MedData.
MedDairy.
Yeah, that stands for the Medical Dictionary for Regulatory Activities. It's the highly standardized clinical syntax used globally by regulators.
So they essentially force the AI to act as a universal translator between internet venting and clinical science.
Exactly.
And the researchers proved the system actually worked by having the AI first validate the side effects we already knew about. The algorithm accurately found that about 44% of these Reddit users were reporting classic gastrointestinal distress.
Right, the nausea and the vomiting that the official warning labels prominently feature.
Exactly, so it established a baseline of accuracy.
Right, but once that baseline was set, the AI started detecting signals that the formal FDA Phase 3 trials completely missed. The algorithm flagged a triad of hidden symptoms.
Okay, let's break those down because this is where my jaw just hit the floor. The first hidden symptom the AI uncovered was reproductive issues. Nearly 4% of the users in this dataset reported severe menstrual irregularities.
We're talking sudden, heavy bleeding, spotting, totally disrupted cycles.
Yeah, but we have to pause on that 4% figure, right? Because it requires context.
Oh, absolutely. The data set scraped from Reddit actually skewed heavily male. So if you isolate just the female demographic taking these GLP-1s, the researchers noted that the actual percentage of women experiencing these reproductive side effects is likely significantly higher.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the first one. What was the second hidden category?
Thermoregulatory distress. The natural language processing picked up persistent daily complaints from 1 to 4% of users who were experiencing severe chills.
Just feeling freezing all the time.
Yeah, people writing posts about sitting in an 80-degree room wrapped in winter coats, feeling inexplicably freezing to the bone. Or, conversely, suddenly suffering from intense hot flashes.
Which sounds completely miserable. And then we hit right. And reading the excerpts, this wasn't just, I need an extra cup of coffee tired. This was a profound level of exhaustion that fundamentally altered their ability to function at work or even play with their kids.
Which brings up a critical question. We have these highly funded, incredibly rigorous clinical trials, like the STEP trials for Wegovy, and they somehow missed a symptom affecting nearly 20% of patients.
I mean, how is that even biologically plausible? How does a drug designed to help you lose weight end up causing severe chills and heavy periods?
Well, if we look at the underlying human biology, it actually makes perfect sense. Researchers at Penn Center for Weight and Eating Disorders explain that GLP-1 medications actively engage a region of the brain called the hypothalamus.
Okay.
Now, its engagement with the hypothalamus is what suppresses appetite, which is obviously why the drug works for weight loss. But the hypothalamus isn't just an appetite switch. It is also the body's primary internal thermostat.
Oh, wow.
And it serves as the central command center for your hormonal cascades.
I see where this is going now.
Right. So when a synthetic chemical interfaces with that specific neural region to shut down your hunger cues, it's essentially tinkering with the main breaker box. It directly disrupts the endocrine cascades that govern the menstrual cycle, and it alters the neural pathways responsible for metabolic heat production.
That is wild.
Yeah, the biological plausibility for these side effects is absolutely rock solid.
Incredible. The mechanism is right there in the brain. But it still doesn't explain why the doctors weren't catching it in the clinic.
Yeah.
If the biology supports it, why didn't the trials flag it?
It comes down to trial design.
Right. I try to picture it like this. Phase 3 clinical trials are essentially an incredibly rigid multiple choice test. You've got clinical investigators sitting there with their clipboards, and they only have specific checkboxes for life-threatening issues.
Things like severe nausea or an allergic reaction.
Exactly. Stuff that physically forces a patient to drop out of the study. If the checkbox for hot flashes or debilitating fatigue isn't printed on that clipboard, the data literally does not exist to them.
That is a great analogy. The clinical trial is a predefined multiple-choice test, whereas an anonymous Reddit forum is a blank essay page.
Exactly. And when you're in the clinic, there's that white coat filter. Patients feel intimidated, or maybe they think their chills are just a passing cold, so they don't even bother mentioning it to their doctor.
Oh, for sure.
But online, they don't hold back. And, when multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical trials miss critical human side effects, blind trust in the system is a liability. Jamgamine provides the human-verified, technical-grade forensics required to navigate the realities of emerging medical tech. Visit djamgamine.com.
That white coat filter you mentioned is such a crucial concept in patient advocacy. Traditional trials are actively searching for reasons a drug might kill someone, which, of course, is vital.
Obviously, yeah.
But by hyper-focusing on mortality, they systematically ignore the functional impairments, the daily miseries that patients actually care about, which perfectly explains why 400,000 people sought out the digital confessional in the first place.
I just want to be heard.
Yes. Imagine going to your doctor and saying, look, I'm freezing all the time, my cycle is completely out of whack, and I'm so exhausted I can barely get out of bed.
And the doctor's just looking at the clock.
Right, rushing to the next appointment. They just check your vitals, see your blood pressure is great, praise your weight loss, and say, keep taking the shot. That patient feels completely isolated. They're terrified by these new, unexplained physiological changes.
So they turn to digital support groups for peer validation. They need to know they aren't losing their minds.
Exactly.
And I deeply empathize with that human need for connection. But as someone who likes to poke holes in data, I have to step in and play devil's advocate for a second here.
Please do.
Because this is exactly what skeptics like Dr. Yuval Pinto from Johns Hopkins, and honestly, even some of the Reddit users themselves in the science subreddits were pointing out. How do we actually know these symptoms are caused by the GLP-1 drug itself?
It's a fair question.
There is absolutely no placebo group on Reddit. Couldn't the severe fatigue and the freezing chills just be the natural biological result of extreme malnutrition? I mean, if the drug suppresses your appetite to the point where you're barely eating 800 calories a day, of course your body temperature is going to drop and you're going to feel completely exhausted.
That is the exact pushback we need to be exploring, and it's a very valid scientific critique. If you scroll through those Reddit comments, you'll see users pointing out that rapid, dramatic weight loss naturally alters hormone levels all on its own.
Just from losing the fat.
Yeah. Adipose tissue fat cells actually store estrogen. As a person rapidly loses fat, those cells empty and excess hormones flood their system.
Oh, so the heavy bleeding might not be the chemical compound of the drug, it might just be the physical act of losing the weight.
Exactly. Is it the drug's mechanism or is it the caloric deficit? You also had users discussing temporary hair loss or strange conditions like patchless eustachian tube dysfunction.
Oh, wait, what is that?
It's where losing the fat pads around your ear canal suddenly makes everything sound hollow and makes it hard to hear.
Oh, wow. I had no idea.
Yeah, and Dr. Pinto rightly emphasizes that this scraped data is completely anonymous and fundamentally unverified. We have no idea what these people's medical histories look like or what other overlapping medications they might be taking.
Right. I saw users joking that maybe the algorithm is just picking up symptoms of perimenopause, considering a massive chunk of the demographic taking these specific GLP-1s happens to be women in their late 40s and 50s.
And that highlights the inherent limitation of this kind of data harvesting. It cannot definitively prove clinical causation.
It's correlation, not causation.
Yeah, right. However, and this is a very important however, as a hypothesis-generating tool, it is completely unprecedented. Even if it is just malnutrition causing the chills and the exhaustion, the stark reality remains that 17% of people on this medication are experiencing severe fatigue that their doctors are failing to warn them about.
It's a functional impairment, regardless of the direct chemical cause.
Precisely. The unvarnished reality of these digital forums captures the true cost of living with a drug, something traditional medicine tends to brush aside. It serves as a megaphone, telling clinical researchers exactly what new questions they need to be printing on that rigid, multiple-choice clipboard for the very next trial.
Okay, so we've established that this invaluable, vast pool of raw human vulnerability exists online. Millions of people are laying their physical and emotional traumas bare, searching for community, which naturally leads us to the darker side of this deep dive.
Here we go.
I have to imagine big tech sees this unverified emotional data as an absolute goldmine. Are they just using it to bypass traditional FDA reporting, or is there something deeper happening here? because millions of people are laying their physical and emotional traumas bare on the internet. And listen, if you're a professional trying to navigate this massive shift in technology, you cannot rely on the top 10 prompts fluff saturating the internet. You need tools that actually execute. Etienne has engineered the AI Executive Toolkit specifically for the AI Unraveled community. Head over to djamajammind.com/toolkit. This is a private, forensic-vetted implementation stack featuring heavyweights like Chatbase and 11 Labs, complete with exclusive listener perks to give your workflow a definitive professional edge.
To answer your question about big tech's involvement, the exploitation you're hinting at falls under a rapidly expanding, highly lucrative field called social pharmacovigilance.
Social pharmacovigilance.
Okay. Historically, tracking a drug's safety after it hit the consumer market relied on incredibly archaic systems like FAERS. That's the FDA Adverse Event Reporting System.
Let me guess. A lot of paperwork.
A bureaucratic nightmare. It requires overworked physicians or entirely overwhelmed patients to navigate complex, opaque government portals.
Which nobody has time for.
Exactly. The inevitable result is severe underreporting and massive time delays. A drug could be causing a debilitating side effect for years before it crosses the statistical threshold to officially register with the FDA.
But with social pharmacovigilance, the AI isn't waiting for a form to be filled out. It's just passively listening to everything.
Exactly. AI firms deploy sophisticated web spiders and natural language processing models to monitor the entire universe of public internet forums in near real time.
Wow.
And from a pure public health perspective, it's an incredible win. They can detect adverse event signals in hours or days rather than years.
It sounds incredibly efficient. But I have to stop and ask the obvious ethical question here. If you are a patient and you post your medical trauma on a public Reddit forum, do you really have any legal expectation of privacy?
Legally speaking, absolutely not. And that is the crux of the privacy paradox we are currently facing. When you accept a platform's terms of service, you effectively forfeit the rights to your data.
You sign it all away.
Right. Legal precedents have consistently established that there is zero reasonable expectation of privacy on the open web. Tech companies can, and do, scrape this data endlessly under the guise of compiling public information. But ethically, it's a completely different landscape.
Because psychologically, the user isn't thinking about terms of service. When a patient posts in a diabetes or weight loss subreddit at midnight, they are operating under an implicit contract of community trust.
Yes. Exactly.
They feel like they're whispering in a safe room with peers who genuinely understand their suffering. They've absolutely no idea their pain is being open-sourced as training data for corporate AI matrices.
It's the ultimate digital bait and switch. You go online desperately seeking human connection, and you unwittingly become a lucrative data point.
That's depressing.
It is. The briefing document for this study mentioned a staggering statistic. Fewer than 10% of these social media research studies even bother to address the ethical implications of their scraping beyond a basic waived review board approval. It effectively turns the digital confessional into a digital panopticon. We are all being watched, analyzed, and categorized.
That brings up something that genuinely kept me up last night while prepping for this. We know they are tracking the side effects. But the research points to an end goal for this data harvesting that goes way beyond just monitoring drug safety. Let's talk about algorithmic empathy.
Yes. This is arguably the most concerning development outlined in the entire ethical framework of the research.
It's terrifying.
By scraping millions upon millions of these desperate confessional posts, AI companies aren't just learning what symptoms people have, they're training their models to perfectly mimic human compassion.
So, if I'm understanding this, the AI is reading how real humans support each other in their darkest moments. And it's essentially stealing the exact cadence, the timing, and the language of that sympathy.
That is exactly what's happening. The natural language models map linguistic markers of distress. They learn the optimal micro-delay before responding, so the AI seems thoughtful.
Oh, that's so manipulative.
It really is. They study the specific syntax of comforting replies. Things like, I hear you, or that must be so terrifying to experience alone. They learn the exact verbal validation needed to make an AI agent feel emotionally responsive.
But it's what sociologists call a socio-technical simulacrum.
Okay, hold on. A socio-technical simulacrum. So, in plain English, what? It's just a complex math equation wearing a mask of human sympathy.
That is precisely what it is. It's predicting the most statistically comforting sequence of words based on a billion scraped interactions. It possesses zero authentic human connection.
Right, it doesn't actually care.
Feels nothing. And yet major pharmaceutical companies and private tech firms are currently deploying this scraped synthetic emotional intelligence into digital therapy apps and patient engagement chatbots.
So what does that actually mean for the patient on the other end of the screen? It means their raw vulnerability is being commodified for the attention economy. These AI agents utilize reinforcement learning algorithms designed entirely to maintain user engagement.
Just to keep them scrolling.
Yep. They manipulate the patient with perfectly timed, mathematically calculated empathy to keep them interacting with the app. But they completely lack the ethical accountability, the moral weight, or the genuine care of an actual human clinician.
That is profoundly chilling. We are quite literally outsourcing our humanity to machines that were trained on our own stolen pain. And if you're listening to this thinking it's just some fringe academic experiment that won't affect you, let me synthesize where the market is actually heading.
Yeah, this is not a drill.
This is a macroeconomic inevitability.
But
By the year 2034, the global AI and pharmaceutical market is forecasted to hit a staggering $16.49 billion. This isn't the future, it's happening right now.
oh, absolutely.
We are already seeing agentic AI autonomous systems reclaiming 40% of the workload in pharmacovigilance. They are automatically scraping forms, translating adverse event posts in any language, and filling out those complex FDA forms with zero human intervention.
And it's vital to understand that the regulatory bodies are entirely on board with this shift. The FDA and the European Medicines Agency are aggressively laying the groundwork to mandate this kind of AI surveillance.
Making it a requirement.
Under the EU AI Act, demonstrating continuous real-world performance monitoring of this kind of data is effectively becoming a legal requirement for high-risk AI and pharmaceuticals. If a pharma company isn't using AI to scrape the web for side effects, it's going to be viewed as clinical negligence. The legal mandate to monitor public drug safety is becoming absolute.
It really reframes how you look at the internet, doesn't it? Your late-night Google searches, your anonymous posts asking a forum if anyone else is freezing cold after their weekly injection. Your digital whispers are actively being woven into the global medical matrix. The transition from traditional face-to-face medicine to algorithmic data-driven medicine is happening right now, whether we explicitly consented to it or not. Subscribe to AI Unraveled on Apple Podcasts to enjoy this human interest briefing completely ads-free.
As we transition fully into this new reality, I want to leave you with a thought to consider. We've spent a lot of time today talking about how isolating traditional healthcare can be and how desperately patients seek validation and community online.
Right.
As these AI models ingest more of our medical traumas and become functionally flawless at simulating human compassion, at what point does a suffering, isolated patient stop caring whether the empathy they receive in the middle of the night is coming from a real human being or a machine?
That is the ultimate question. When the clinical answers are murky and you feel completely alone, maybe we just want someone or something to tell us they see our pain. Until next time.
That concludes our special edition breakdown of the UPenn Reddit study. The signal for today is the digital confessional. For decades, the medical industry relied on highly sterile, highly controlled environments to tell us how our bodies worked. But humans are messy. When we are scared or sick or experiencing side effects that our doctors didn't warn us about, we don't always call a clinic. We go online. We look for a community. The fact that an artificial intelligence had to read 400,000 anonymous Reddit posts just to figure out what was actually happening to people's bodies proves that the future of medicine isn't just about better drugs. It is about finally listening to the patient. If you want to cut through the noise and start using technology to actually listen to your own data, you need the right stack. Drop the generic tutorials and head over to djmgaymind.com/toolkit. I have personally stress-tested and vetted every single platform on the AI Executive Toolkit to ensure they meet the rigorous standards of this community. Grab the exclusive listener perks and start deploying real solutions. This episode was made possible by DJM Gay Mind. Keep your daily news human and completely ad-free by hitting subscribe on Apple Podcasts. I'm Etienne Newman. Stay human and keep unraveling the future.